everybody, it's Angela Ardolino with Your Natural Dog, and my guest today is Jessica Fisher, who is an awesome podcaster and a positive reinforcement dog trainer who just went through Dr. Ruth Roberts' pet health coaching program. So we're going to talk about that, her training, how knowing about food and diet helps with training and behavior, and everything that she learned in the program and how she now gets to apply it not only to her clients, but to her own pet's health. So stay tuned.
This is Blanche, and she's the most noodle-ish dog you've ever met in your entire life. She's just the most loved dog you've ever met, but if you leave her alone, it becomes the total opposite thing. Blanche has severe separation anxiety to the point where she will scratch doors down to the wood, bark all night, cry if you leave her for 5 minutes. I tried the collars, I tried the sprays, I tried thunder blankets. The only thing that's ever worked was CBD, and that's why I got started in this business. Our calm tincture is 550 milligrams of full spectrum CBD and lavender. It's the perfect remedy for separation anxiety, stress, or fear. I love my dog, and I hated knowing that she was home freaking out. So I wanted to find an all-natural way to do it. No doggy Prozac, all natural. And once I found CBD, there's no other option. CBD Dog Health, healing naturally.
Hey everybody, we're back with my special guest, Jessica Fisher, and we're talking about what is a holistic pet health coach. But before we do that, I want to talk about what you did before you became a holistic pet health coach. You were a positive reinforcement dog trainer, which I already love the sound of that, but tell us listeners what that is and why, when you became a trainer, why you chose this option.
Yeah, well, positive reinforcement, it just resonated with me. So as a dog trainer, there are many different types of training methods out there. And I knew when I started out my journey, it was really interesting because it was actually feedback that I got from the audience, from people who were watching me on YouTube. And I was doing a lot of work in animal rescue, and they were like, it'd be so much better if you could just keep these animals out of shelters. And that resonated, like that hit my heart so hard. And I was like, man, what can I do to keep animals out of shelters? And I was like, I'll just learn how to train dogs, and then I'll fix the problem before it ever escalates to getting these animals in shelters. So I just dug deep, and I watched and I learned and I did so much research and was very confused at first, like a lot of people I've noticed online are, because there are so many different methods of training, and it's like there's a lot of conflicting information, and what should you actually do? And the more I learned and the more I dug in, positive reinforcement resonated with me, I think primarily because my degree is in psychology, so it just makes sense. Like that's how mammals learn, is through you do something that someone else wants you to do and you get rewarded for it. And so the brain starts rewiring to say, well, I really liked that reward, so I'm going to do that behavior more often to continue to get rewarded, whatever that reward is. And so that's kind of the path I went down. And I spent years actually practicing with my own dogs. And then I spent years training other people's dogs for free to learn, to figure it all out, to find out what worked and what didn't work, and for me individually. And so positive reinforcement was just what resonated with me, and I still do it some, but as I was going through and training dogs and going into people's homes, I was teaching them about nutrition because it was what I was most passionate about. And I started seeing even better results in the behavior of these dogs by improving their nutrition than a lot of the other things we were doing. So I completely that is the basis of the dog training I do in home with people in my neighborhood, they're always, calling me up, messaging me on Facebook. Hey, you're the dog trainer in our neighborhood. I need help. And it's always the first thing we do because it gets the most dramatic results.
I love that you say that because it makes so much sense. I had the same, I'm not a trainer, but, I have seen, especially over COVID at my groom shop, so many dogs come in with, we called it no manners. They didn't even leave the house, much less go to get a groom, go be socialized, be put on a leash, nothing. So these dogs were out of control. So of course we went through a lot of our calm from CBD Dog Health to calm them down. But I'm not a trainer. And it was like, I didn't even know where to begin to tell these people. But what I did know is that when we get a dog in boarding who was just couldn't settle down, couldn't listen, it reminded me of a hyperactive teenager. And often we would look at what they were feeding them, and it was a kibble. A lot of times it had corn syrup in it, sugar in it. So I literally would tell them, this is why your dog is so hyperactive and probably can't even pay attention while being trained, because you got to start with the gut. So I love that you say that. What are like some of the differences you saw when you were able to, was there ever a case that was difficult and you're like, oh, here's the root of the problem. Let's change this. And now let's start getting through to the dog.
Yeah, it's a lot of calming. It's a lot of focus. So mostly what I've found was just that the dogs were in a state that when they were eating the highly processed, dry, rendered product, they couldn't focus. They were all over the place and jumping up. Exactly. And when we get them on a fresh food diet, they are just so much calmer. They can focus. They can pay attention to you. And they may still have those maybe I'm only 2 and I'm still a puppy and I'm, I want to do all these things and I'm used to doing all these things that maybe my parents don't love me doing, jumping up on the counter, all the things, but they can actually focus. You can say their name, you can give them a cue, and they can actually pay attention to you. And that's really one of the biggest things, because training a dog really isn't hard. It's all about just rewarding the behaviors you want them to do, and a lot of ignoring the bad behaviors, and they start going away. It's really simple. It's not easy, but it's simple. You know what I mean? It's very simple. And so when you just put all of these things in place for a pet parent, they are really, really simple to do, and everything just starts clicking. And people are like, wow, because I tell them, I'm like, I'm not here to turn your dog into a robot. We are not going to have that dog that sits in the corner and waits for your every move. That's not who I am. I'm not doing that with your dog. But, when we can interact with our dog and create that bond to where they trust us and we trust them, that's beautiful. That's what we want, right?
It is beautiful. And you're basically just like you work with your kids and teach them things. They're a very important member of the family. And if you want them to be a good member of the family, you have to have the same patience. So for those people that rescue dogs, because I don't think people understand that rescuing a dog, they've already had some trauma, we don't know why they ended up there. A lot of times it's somebody gets a puppy, has no idea what to do, and then surrenders them because they can't take it anymore. That's how I ended up with most of my rescues, is people actually dropping them off at the shop, or leaving, abandoning, putting them in boarding and then never picking them up again. And a lot of times it could be medical bills, but a lot of times it's behavioral, which is so easy to fix. And what I love is that you're talking about food first. What are we feeding them so that they are, in this state where they can listen and pay attention? We also have to remember that they have to get used to their new home and new family. And I feel like people give up so early. Do you have any tips on, how long or what people could do if they do have a rescue dog to make them more comfortable Do they start the training right away? Do they let them get acclimated first and then start training?
I think it really depends on the dog and the temperament of the dog when you adopt them, because some dogs are going to just be terrified out of their minds, and we want to give them space to realize that everything's good. Like they're safe. They're not going anywhere. This is their new home, right? We're not shuffling them around from place to place to place. We want to give them time to kind of decompress. And then other dogs, you can bring them in your home and they're like, awesome, this is great, this is wonderful, but I don't have so much energy and I'm just bouncing off the walls because this is so wonderful. So I think we have to kind of like really evaluate the dog as an individual to kind of figure out how we want to move forward. So even with the dogs that we need to give them time to kind of decompress and realize that they're safe, that doesn't mean that we can't start training with them. I think we can, just on kind of like a really like low key kind of
like routine.
Yeah, providing them a routine, providing them structure. Also with bonding, like we can use food to help them come out of their shell. Or anything that they like and love. With most dogs, they're very food motivated. There are some dogs that may be more play motivated or toy motivated, but in general, overall, like most dogs are very food motivated. So I think it's a really cool, like, experiment to have with a new dog coming into your home, figuring out what I call their like hierarchy of value. What do they like? Try all these kinds of different things, different foods, different toys, different games, if they're up for playing games with you, whether that's fetch or whatever it is, and figure out what their, hierarchy of values are. And it's going to really start bonding you and the dog and letting the dog know that they're safe and they're loved and this is fun and, they can trust you. So yeah, I think putting that, like you said, the routine in place, super, super important so that they know like this is their safe space, that this is their family now, they're part of the home. And it can really, for some of these dogs, it can take up to 3 months for them to completely feel like, okay, I'm safe. This is my home. I'm not going anywhere. I'm not being abandoned again. I'm not being carted off to another, shelter or foster home, or whatever it may be. So yeah, giving them time. And one of the other things that I really like to tell people, and this kind of originated with me when I was working with my own reactive dog, is really having a sense of empathy for your dog. And I tell people, specifically with reactive dogs, I say, stop saying reactive. Start telling yourself, my dog is having a trauma response. And your whole physiology changes when you just make that simple shift of what terminology you use. So whatever you need to do to put into place, empathy for this being that you've just brought into your home, that's, I think, one of the key things, because then we can really not put ourselves first, if that makes sense. Like, don't put your ego above the safety of the dog that you are rescuing and bringing into your home.
I think it's also important, that 3-month period, to keep in mind that your dogs that you already have kind of have to go through that period also. I always make a joke at my house that my dogs are like, oh, this one's staying, so we might as well get used to her and welcome her to the pack kind of thing. So I can't even imagine what it must be like to be a trainer like yourself and have your experience and then now become a holistic pet health coach, and how that just has probably made you the most well-rounded and sought-after trainer because of this reason. Because I know that program was really hard to go through, because I went through it and it is very difficult. But we're going to talk about it when we come back, about you becoming a holistic pet coach when we come back.
This is Daisy. She's our 17-year-old rescue, and her owner surrendered her to the veterinarian because she couldn't walk anymore. And the vet gave us a call, and we rescued her, brought her to our rescue farm here. We took her off all of her prescription medications. She was having seizures every day, grand mal seizures. She had no hair on her feet, on her tail. And we have her on a CBD regimen, and she has come back alive. She's become puppy-like. She runs around and plays, and she could live to be 20 years old and live a very long, happy, pain-free life. CBD Dog Health, healing naturally.
And we're back with Jessica Fisher, and we're talking about becoming a holistic pet coach, which most of you are probably like, what the heck is that? Or you've probably heard of a human health coach, which is huge on the human side of things. And we're lucky enough to have Dr. Ruth Roberts, who has started a program for both pet parents, veterinarians, and vet techs to become holistic pet health coaches. And Jessica went through it. She is a graduate. How do you think this has helped you to become a better trainer along with a coach? Because you literally, I feel like, have gotten such a well-rounded education.
It is. It was very robust, more than I expected going in, quite honestly. Pleasantly surprised, right? Because you want, somebody like me, of course, I want as much knowledge as I can get. And, a couple of things I've noticed kind of still going into people's homes and doing the in-home dog training, I'm seeing things that I didn't see before in dogs. So for example, I don't know, a couple months ago, I went into somebody's home and their dog, the way they were laying with their front paw kind of out, I'm like, that's interesting. I wonder if they're having some pain or discomfort in those joints, and that, just the way your dog sits or lays can really tell you a lot about the underlying physiology that you may not otherwise notice. And the pet parent, of course, was like, oh, I've never noticed that before. And I'm like, okay, well, maybe it's just something that happened today because you went on a long hike. I don't know, but let's keep an eye on that.
Yeah, I'm sure.
So,
and or even like toxins in their home, or, seeing a toy or the food or any type, or I love when people feed really well, but then give like a milk bone treat or a bag strip or something like that.
Yeah, I know. I think I've been pretty lucky. I consider myself very blessed that I have been able to take social media for the past decade and really kind of extract a lot of incredible information from a lot of different veterinarians that I have followed. And the reason I say that is because, a lot of people just kind of take social media as like stress relief. I'm scrolling through watching cat videos. So being able to take a lot of information from people, that toxins in the home has been part of my dog training routine for years, thankfully. Awesome. But I have learned more through the Holistic Pet Health Coaching Program about really how it's affecting the planet. And there are so many more things to look for, and just the different systems of the body and how they're all impacted through toxins, through endocrine disruptors. There's just so much going on. I do have a much more well-rounded body of knowledge to provide to people, and kind of shifting. I still do some dog training, but shifting more to doing pet health coaching because that is something I can do online with people. And so it's just I can do more of it and make more use out of my time and help more people and their pets that way. It's been really incredible. I'm thrilled to have had the program and thankful for Dr. Ruth for putting it out there.
And what's so cool about Dr. Ruth is that she's not some conventional vet. She has been a holistic vet for over 30 years. So she's one of those veterinarians that got out of school and continued to teach and learn and educate herself. So she was one of the originals that were teaching you how to cook and feed your pet real food, to learning about traditional Chinese medicine, to, of course, learning about cannabis medicine and mushroom medicine and adaptogens. So Jessica probably knows more than most veterinarians getting out of school know, because she got access to this education. And guess what? If there's anybody that really is interested in doing this for, personal reasons, for me, I wanted to know everything. I know a lot about, plants and mushrooms, but to learn about Chinese medicine and everything that Ruth taught is amazing. These are things that you wish your veterinarian would tell you. And then if you want to learn more, you get to actually learn. How do you see yourself using it? Have you been able to implement it and had any clients yet that you've been able to help?
I have, and it's incredibly rewarding because as you were talking about the program that Dr. Ruth put together and being a holistic veterinarian, I think one of the biggest benefits of her program specifically is that she not only goes through, okay, this is a system of the body, this is what can go wrong in this system, this is what a traditional veterinarian would do, this is what I would do instead, or maybe in addition to, and then you get that TCVM, the traditional Chinese veterinary medicine part of it as well. It's so well-rounded and robust, and it just, I know we talk a lot in the 2.0 pet space about having this toolbox to pull from. So it gives you so much to pull from your toolbox. And yeah, I've been able to, everything from, a pet parent who got blood work back and their veterinarian was like, kind of blew it off and didn't explain it to them. And I've gone through and been able to explain it to them. Like, what is actually going on? What is this data telling you? Which was kind of funny because at the end of the day, it was like, your kitty's dehydrated, right? But
it's amazing. It's amazing.
Yes. And
I don't think people understand when, because we do consultation, the same thing, and we would get all the paperwork, go through it, look at it, and go, why are you getting those antibiotics? There's no bacterial infection. Well, just in case there was one, to rule it out. No, now we've wrecked the gut. So it's like constantly asking, why were you giving that medication? And pet parents didn't even know why. Just the doctor prescribed it and they're getting it and they're like, but this medication is for this and your dog has no signs of this. So we have no idea why this was prescribed. Like, happens constantly. So if you are a pet parent who can't figure out your dog has a health issue and can't figure out what it is, and remember, conventional vets aren't taught about diet and nutrition, and they're not taught about the endocannabinoid system, which is the master system that controls all of the other systems. So how can they help you if it's a deficiency in your endocannabinoid system, for instance? What is something that you learned that you were like, what? That's crazy. Or a couple things that you learned.
Yeah, I think there were so many light bulb moments. My favorite, honestly, was learning about the lab work. I'm a very data-driven person. I am very organized and I like to see all the boxes are checked and I have, yes. So learning how to interpret the data from any lab work was my brain was just like, yes, my heart was so happy. And that was fun. The section on the endocannabinoid system was, it was intense because there's so much there. I had there was a lot of information there. I think learning about all the different types of cancer and how, they're not all treated the same and we don't recommend the same thing for every type of cancer. There were a lot of cases where it was, my heart was just breaking with some of the pictures of these animals that were suffering. Of course, I went into it knowing, like you just said, that veterinarians have very little nutritional education, and what they do get taught is, of course, funded by what we know as big candy companies. And, it's just, I think all around, it was an incredible experience to get a glimpse. I will say one thing, it gave me a deeper appreciation of our veterinarians, because I already love and very much admire our veterinarians, because I think they are doing the absolute best they can with what they have in an already like really, really struggling system. Like they just don't have the time, the money, the energy, the resources. And it gave me a really, really incredible appreciation for like, I felt like this was just like the surface of what a veterinarian actually learns and has to know and absorb. And so that was one of the biggest like wow moments for me. Was I knew it, but I didn't know it. You know what I mean?
Right. So, and you still have access to Dr. Ruth and to me, of course, when it comes to cannabis and mushrooms. So if you do get a case or something special, you get to come back and talk with all of the coaches, us, Dr. Ruth. So literally you have a team of people who want to figure out how to help your pet. And I think that's amazing. People don't understand that veterinarians aren't like, specialized. They have to like know everything. There aren't specialists that they, like your general practitioner that goes, oh yeah, go see that specialist. There's not always that specialist there. I think one of the biggest things that shocked me was to know that every pharmaceutical is based on something found in nature. And that kind of became my mission to go, okay, how do I find the original that nature provided? And let me see what happens when we use that instead of this pharmaceutical that's going to cause some sort of side effect. So I thought that was the coolest thing, is to know that I could find it. I also loved her when to go to the ER vet. And, people always ask me on a regular basis, who's your vet? Who's your vet? Especially, if they live near me. And I honestly go get blood work, x-rays, and then I get on a phone call with Dr. Ruth, with one of my favorite holistic vets, and go through everything, because I'm empowered now like you are. And we know how to figure things out now. We know what to do. We know how to read things. And to me, that is the most beautiful thing.
It is. And it's like, when was the last time a veterinarian sat down and coached a patient on how to, or client on how to take their patient through a rotation and elimination diet because their allergies are just out of control, right? Instead of just, here, take Apoquel for the rest of their life, right? Let's figure out the root cause of what's going on and how can we adjust to meet this animal's needs.
Right. And those listening, we can't just give them Apoquel for the rest of their life. It might be the easiest, most convenient thing, but it's not, because it's going to get them sick, whether it's already linked to cancer. It's literally in their pamphlet inside the drug that you never get. That pamphlet that says it leads to neoplasia, which is cancer. So that's why that's not an option, and finding the natural option is always the way. Jessica, thank you so much for coming on. It was a long time. We were waiting for you to finish so that we could talk all about it, because I knew you would be a perfect candidate for this program. How do people find you? You also have a podcast, which is fantastic and filled with, or you have 2 podcasts, I think now. How can people follow you, listen to your podcast, and then if they want to get you for a health coach, how they contact you?
Absolutely. So my main podcast is the Pet Parenting Reset. You can find it on any podcast app that you happen to be listening on. I also am a co-host on Pet Health Junkies. That one's fun. It doesn't come out as often, but the wait is well worth it. And if you are interested in booking a call with me to talk about potentially being part of your pet's healthcare team, I would love to do that. You can go to my website, jessicalfisher.com.
Awesome. And those of you that are veterinarians and vet techs who want to learn more about holistic medicine, especially about plant and mushroom medicine and Chinese traditional medicine, you can sign up for this program with Dr. Ruth Roberts. And if you were a pet parent you can also sign up for the program, and we'll have the link in our show notes. Jessica, it was awesome having you on, and I think I get to see you this year. Are you going to go to Super Zoo?
Going to Super Zoo and hopefully AHVMA.
Awesome. I will see you at both. That is awesome. Cool. Thank you so much for coming on today.
Thank you for having me.
You bet.